All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our very first gCON for Google Apps for Education. Uh, we've got a great day of presentations for you today. And I wanted to talk a little bit before we get started about the inspiration for gCON for Google Apps for Education. So some of you might remember that we held a 4-day event back in September for Google Apps. It was a really successful event, and we had thousands of people joining us from all over the world to learn more about using and administering Google Apps in their organization. So the feedback for that event was awesome. There's so much positive things that came from it, so many positive things that came from it. And we did hear a little bit from the education community that they felt a little left out. I know that the use cases and the needs for Google Apps for Education districts and universities and schools are extremely different than businesses and nonprofits. So we wanted to put together a dedicated day just for you, Google Apps for Education users and admins. So that's what we have here today. So thanks again for joining us. We have 3 awesome presentations for you lined up, starting with one now, and then we have another session for educators. So the first session will be strictly for educators. The second session will also be strictly for educators. And then the last session will be for Google Apps for Education admins. And we've actually collected a few experienced admins who are going to join us and talk about their experiences with Google Apps for Education and what they have done to make Google Apps successful in their domain, and just sort of the process that's gone along there. So before we go ahead and get started, and before I introduce our presenter, I want to mention that we are using the Q&A in this Hangout on Air to do questions. So you should find that in the right-hand side of the Hangout window. So please submit as many questions there as you'd like. I would urge you to just take a quick look and make sure that your question hasn't already been asked. And if it has, please +1 that question in the Q&A app so we can see exactly what's important to you guys, and I can make sure that the high priority questions do get answered. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our first presenter for today. So we're joined by Juan De Luca. He is a Google certified trainer, a Google certified teacher, and he currently serves as a educational technology consultant for schools. So he's led countless training sessions for Google Classroom. He knows the ins and outs of it, and he's here to share his best practices for getting started with Classroom and then leveraging it to its full potential. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Juan, who's going to go ahead and get started with his presentation. So Juan, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here. Hello, everybody. I'll be talking about the best practices for using Google Classroom. And I have a presentation, and we'll go back and forth between the presentation and some live demos. Okay? So I'll do a screen share right now and take a look at the presentation. So if you're active on Google Plus or on Twitter, you can follow me at +Juan De Luca or @DeLucaEd. So let's get started with what is Google Classroom. Google Classroom is actually the first tool that was entirely made for education by Google, because as we know, Google Apps for Education looks basically the same as Google Apps for Business, just is free. That's the main difference. But Classroom is a tool that was created thinking about how to make life easier for educators. So to help educators have a better document workflow, to give them a place where they can have classroom discussions, where they can share materials. And that's how Classroom started with a beta during the summer. So maybe some of you were part of that. I played with it a little, and it has changed quite a bit So it is important to remember that Classroom is a work in progress, just like every other Google product. And that it's changing and it's evolving and it's getting better. So, it's an exciting time to be a teacher, and Classroom really gives us a lot of tools to make our lives easier. Okay, so now let me get started with Classroom. I know most of you probably have created a class, so you know how easy it is. But for those who haven't, now I'm showing the Classroom site. If you go to classroom.google.com, for the first time, it will ask you if you're a teacher or a student. So if you're a teacher, you click on Teacher. If you make a mistake, you have to talk to your admin to make sure you get changed to the teacher group, and only the admin can do that. But once you're in, you get this screen. I already have a few classes created. And you have this button on the top right where you can either join a class or create a class. So teachers get both options. Students will only get the join class option. So in order to create a class, you give it a name and then a section. So I'll do English. I have English 6A and 6B. Now I'm going to do English 6C. Okay, and that's just like that. You create a class, and it will give you a space where you can put materials and have a stream and add your students. So as soon as you create a class, this is what you get. You will get the default theme, and you can change this on the bottom right of the theme. It says change class theme. So besides the aesthetic nature of this, it's important so you can recognize your classes more easily. If you have several English classes, so you can recognize which one is A, B, and C, for example. So I'm changing the class theme. Okay. So just like that, I created a class. It's that easy. Now, regarding the section, it's important that if you're teaching the same class several times, that you name them the same and then just differentiate them by section, because later on we're going to see how you can have multiple assignments in different classes. So if you're teaching the same math class and you're doing the same assignment for all three classes, you can assign work for the three classes at the same time. So it's just easier for you to do that. Now, when you get started on your class, you have a section called About. And now I'm gonna go to English 6B. And here on the top left, you'll have a menu with all of your classes. English 6B now. And you have an About button. Okay. Here, a good idea is to put some resources to get some, for example, a syllabus. You can put up a syllabus. Other resources, like maybe if you have a classroom site, you can add materials here on the bottom. So you can put the link, for example, class site, and then just copy the URL and paste the URL here and attach link. You can also add materials from Google Drive. Okay. You can also add videos. Now regarding Google Drive items, you can only upload certain items. So you can only upload a document or a spreadsheet or a presentation. So any Google Drive document you can upload, but you cannot upload a whole folder. So if you are a teacher and you have several resources in a folder, what you need to do is attach the link. So, for example, if I I have I have my folder here that I want to share. I get the shareable link. I copy the link, and then I'll paste it here. And this wouldn't be class site, but materials. So if you're sharing a URL, just make sure if you're sharing a folder, make sure you share the URL, because if not, if you do it through Drive, you can only add individual documents. So I'll add and I'll post.
Hey, Juan.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Go ahead.
So it looks like we have a ton of awesome questions rolling in the Q&A app.
Great.
First of all, I just wanted to say one thing to everyone. Juan and I are not affiliated with Google in any way, so we can't comment on specific roadmap things with Google Classroom. So we can guess, and we can say we think certain features will be added, but we can't say for certain if things will. So a lot of the questions here, if X will be available in Classroom soon. I just want to make a point that we can't say anything in any official way about what will be added to Classroom. And then the question that I wanted to go over now was specifically about the About section, Juan, which you were just going over. So the question is, how can we make the About section more robust? And I think you covered a few different ways that you can do that. But the question was specifically about integrating with Google Calendar. Is there a way to integrate Google Calendar inside of the About section in Classroom?
That's a good question, and you would have to do the same as we did with the folder. You would have to get the calendar URL. Unfortunately, the Classroom doesn't work like a Google site where you can embed. So you would get the code and embed the code. Here you can only add the URL, which could be helpful for posting announcements and assignments. So if you have your own calendar, it would be a good idea to put the URL here in About. But unfortunately, you can't embed it. And regarding, we're going to talk a little bit at the end about what you mentioned. We don't work at Google, but there is a way for you to provide feedback, which is really important, because the elements that get most attention, then Googlers will work on them. So if you feel that the calendar integration is really important, make sure you provide feedback on that. Okay. So thanks for that, Andrew, and be sure to interrupt me anytime when there's a good question like that one. And then I also saw another tip, and I can't remember. I watched a few YouTube videos where, for example, you could also have a document and add a document with links. So then if you're updating your resources, you only have to update the document and not go directly to Google Classroom and update Classroom. You're doing it through Google Drive, which is easier and faster. So that's another tip. Okay, now let's go to this adding students part. There's now 3 ways to add students. You can invite them, and you can invite them by user groups or by domain groups. So let me go back to Google Classroom, and we're going to go to the students section. So after you created your class, you invite students. You can click this blue button and invite them. So if you're really organized and have your contacts in groups, like I do, you can choose one of the user-created groups. So these are, if you go to contacts on your Google Apps account, go to contacts and create groups, you will find them here. So I actually created a group called English 6B, and I already invited Andrew and some other fake accounts, Jen, Sandra, and Troy. They're not real students, but I invited them all. So if you have a group, you just select the group and then select all and invite students. Now, it is important to mention that after you invite them, that doesn't automatically enroll them in the class. As you can see, I invited these 4 students, and Andrew, Jen, and Sandra are they have already accepted and joined the class. So they got an email, they clicked on the email and accepted joining the class. But Troy, he has been invited, but he hasn't opened the email and clicked on join. So if I want to send Troy a reminder, I can send them an email and tell them, remember to join the class. Okay. Now the second way of inviting students easily, so you don't have to pick them one by one from your directory or your contacts, is by admin created groups. So if there's groups created by your admin in your domain creates these groups, then you can add them also by group. So that's also a quick way to add students. And the third option is by class code. So I don't know if it's hard to read, but class codes have 6 numbers and digits. So you can share this by projecting it on the in your whiteboard or sending it by email. Just share the class code, and your students can join. To me, the easiest is, if you already have your groups created, is inviting them, but you have all those options. All right. Now, still in the student section, and this is fairly new. This was an update that came maybe a couple weeks ago. You can determine if students can post and comment on the classroom stream, or they can only comment, or only teacher can post or comment. So you have those 3 levels of letting students post and comment. Before, students could just post, and as a teacher, all you could do was remove the posts or the comments. But now you have the choice of letting students, for example, only comment. So if you're going to make an announcement regarding some reading they have to do for homework, then they cannot post anything new, but they can comment if you choose this the second level, which is actually what I would recommend for most cases. Because if you have students posting for asking questions, and which is, that's great that they're using the tool to communicate and to work together, but then you're going to get a very long stream, and they might get lost in there. So to keep them better organized, it's not a bad idea to have students only comment. So if they have a question about the homework, that they comment there on the assignment or on the post directly, and not create a new post and create notifications for all. And that is here in the section, in the student section. All right, so moving on, now we're going to go to the stream, and we're going to take a look at announcements. So here on your stream, you can add announcements or assignments. Okay, so if you want to tell them something, if you want to assign a homework, for example, a reading that they have to do at home, then I would do it as an announcement. So read this for tomorrow. Okay, and then I can attach a file. I can attach also a Google Drive file. I can attach a YouTube video or a URL. So if I have, for example, a PDF that I want them to read, I can just share it here in announcements, and they'll all get a notification to do that. Okay. And now here you can see that there's a drop-down menu. I have English 6B. But if I want all of my English classes to read this for homework, I can select multiple classes and and post this in all 3 classes. So I don't have to go to 6C and 6A, but do it all from here, and they will all get the post and the notification. So I can post it to 3 classes, and that's it. Okay. Now there's also, I know that there's a lot of teachers using Google Forms for either surveys or assessments, like tests with Flubaroo and things like that. If you're using a Google form, sometimes teachers make the mistake of setting it up as an assignment, because with an assignment, students need to turn in something. So if you have a Google form, if you have something, a test that you want them to complete, or any other kind of form, then you can share that and put the URL, attach the link, and then they can complete it, but they don't have to turn anything in. So that's one common mistake that teachers do. Since it's going to be graded, they think it's an assignment, but there's nothing for the students to turn in when they hit submit in a Google form. All that goes into a spreadsheet, so it's not going to be recorded in Google Classroom. So there's no form classroom integration yet. Okay. So Andrew, no questions on announcements so far?
Let's see. I know there was one asking if you knew of a way to make a sticky announcement, so announcement that would just lock at the top of the screen. Do you know if that's possible?
That is a good question. No, I don't think it's possible. Well, it's not possible now. All you can do now is edit and delete, but that would be something to submit feedback, and as for Google to consider it. So yeah, that's not a bad idea. Okay, now we're going to get into the most interesting part, which is assignments, and that's so far the most powerful part here in Google Classroom. So actually, Andrew's going to help me with this one. I'm going to assign a haiku, and the due date is, let's say, today is the 5th. Yeah, let's make it for today at 1:00 p.m. So you have to hurry up. I know it's just a haiku, so it's not that long. What I want to do this time, and this is what Classroom is really a powerful tool to use, is to make a copy of a Google document for each student. So right now I'm going to attach a Google Drive item, and I have a haiku template already created. So let me search for that. That's it. So I'm going to add it, and once I add the document, I have 3 options for my students. The default is going to be students can view the file. So in this case, they would have to make a copy themselves and then turn it in. But there's a better way to do that. Well, then their students can edit the file, but I don't want 25 students creating one haiku. I want each student to create one themselves. So I'm going to make a copy for each student. Okay. And again, I can select several classes if I'm assigning this to different classes. Now, the tricky part with this is that if you have a due date, all 3 classes would have the same due date. So if you have different due dates for different classes, you're going to have to go and manually go to the class. So that's something to point out. So I will assign this. Okay. And it's going to make assignment created. And then I get a little notification that says how many of these are done and how many are not done. Since I just assigned it, none of them are done. So
I'm working on mine, Juan, don't worry.
Great. And in the meantime, I'm going to share my my Google Drive. So here I have my Google my drive, and I'm showing my drive. When you use Classroom for the first time, it will create a drive folder called Classroom, and inside will create a folder for each of your classes. This will look the same for students. So students will also get a folder for each of their classes. So English 6B. And I just created this assignment called Haiku. Now, if I look at my Google Drive, even though I have 3 registered students in my class, I can only see Andrew's. Okay, the documents get created automatically after the student gets the email notification and goes to Classroom and creates the assignment. So let me show you as a student while Andrew is working. As a student, I'm logged in now as Jen. Okay. I got the Haiku assignment. Okay. It says the name of the assignment. If I wrote any instructions, it'll come up there, and the due date. So I'm going to view the assignment. And the document is not yet created. So the document doesn't exist for Jen yet. So I have to, as a student, go to Classroom, and it's loading. Oops. Try reloading. I'll try that. And that's the thing with Classroom. They're still working on it. So sometimes, you have to wait a few seconds, but you'll eventually get it. So then you get the name of the assignment, and if I hit my assignment, then I get the link. Okay. Once I hit the link as a student, then that document is created. Okay. So Andrew, how are you doing on your assignment?
I'm all done if you want to take a look.
Sure. Okay, let's look at yours. Okay. Do you want to share your screen, or do you want me as a teacher? I'll share it as a teacher.
I already turned it in.
Oh, you turned it in. Wow,
yeah.
That was fast. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, you're right. There's one done. Let me click on it. And sure enough, it's Andrew's. Did you create it right now, or did you have it already set up, the Haiku, or did you copy paste? Tell us the truth.
This is 100% genuine original work. No, I'm just kidding. I copy and pasted this.
Oh, okay. But it's very cool because it has to do with technology and no longer using backpacks because you're paperless now. It's pretty cool. Okay, so Andrew turned in his assignment, and he had a turn in button on the top right. Now that he turned it in, he no longer has editing rights. So as a teacher now, I can edit. But while Andrew was working on his assignment, I couldn't edit. All I could do was comment and provide suggestions. So that's all I could do as a teacher. Okay. Now, if, for example, I notice something, a mistake, or this is the first draft, and they need to work on it a little and then return it, I can, for example, make a comment here. Look for a synonym. Okay. Well, if I can spell synonym. Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to select this assignment and return it. I can also provide some feedback here. Well done, but check comments. And I'll return the assignment. And it's returning it. Might take a couple seconds, but it should return it. Okay. Now, did you get it?
Do you want me to go ahead and share my screen and show that view?
Sure.
Okay. 1 second. So I have it here. I can open it back up.
Right. And you have editing rights again. Right.
So let's see if I can find a synonym for backpack. I don't know.
I don't know. Don't worry about it. I just.
But so let's say I'll just resolve it, and then do I go back to turn in again?
Okay, not yet. I just want to show my screen now.
Okay, it's back on yours.
Okay, so once I turned it in, you can see that my screen changed and it says access denied, that I no longer have permission to access the document. So if you're getting this, it's because you returned it to the student, or actually the student can get it back. Okay, so they can get the assignment back even after they turned it in. They can bring it back and edit it back again. So if you're seeing this screen, it's because the student has it. So if I reload, I can only comment and suggest now.
Juan, can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
So everyone, we're at the 30-minute,
Okay.
the end of the 30-minute time slot. So we have a lot more stuff to cover, and I'd like to maybe take up the full hour if we can. But I just want to mention, if you have something, if you need to do something else, you need to leave the Hangout. The entire session will be recorded, so you'll be able to view everything. You won't miss anything that goes on during the Hangout. But I want to make sure that we have time to go through the rest of Juan's presentation and also get to the questions. So like I said, the recording will be available, so don't worry, you won't miss anything. So all right, Juan, if you want to go ahead and keep going.
Sure, thanks. So that's basically the workflow you're going to have for example, an English class, where you have a rough draft, and then the student turns it in, and then you return it. They make some changes, and then for suggesting, I like the comments better personally, because for suggesting you're changing, the document, and then the student can say yes or no to those suggested changes. But for comments, when you comment, you're making them be a bit more, creative about how they're going to resolve that issue. So you can do both or either or, but I recommend using comments instead of suggestions instead. Okay, so that's more or less the feedback when you have an assignment per student. Now, in terms of grading, after did you turn it back in? Did you turn it back in, Andrew?
Sorry, I was on mute. I am turning it in right now.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so it should be turned in.
Yeah, and if you're looking at my screen, it just said resubmit it. So now I can put a grade on it. So if they're, I'm going to take a look at Andrew. So I don't even have to look at it. I know it's a 100.
Juan,
so,
one of the questions. Thank you actually for the compliment. But one of the questions here was asking if you can add a score other than the 4 that are provided there. Could you just show how you do that?
Yes. So it wasn't possible until maybe a few weeks back, but now, so by default you get 120, 50, and 100. But if you just delete this number and write your own, so if it's worth 30 points, I can just manually set it to 30, hit enter, okay, and update it. So it's worth 30 points now, and I can give you your 30 points. Okay. Now, as you can see, Jen hasn't turned it in, but I can still give her a grade. Okay. So even if you don't have a document for the students, you can grade them, and this will be important when we look at a workaround for collaborative assignments. Okay, so even if they didn't turn in anything, you can still give them a grade. Now, after you gave them a grade, you can download those grades, and you can download just for this assignment, grades for this assignment, or for all assignments. So right now, Google Classroom is not really a grading. It doesn't have a grading system integrated where, like many of you have in school, like Power School, and there's others. But what you can do is, if you're using one of those systems, is download the scores and then copy and paste. Okay. Now, in other systems, when you're copying and pasting, the students are usually sorted by last name. So this was also an update that happened a few weeks ago. Now you can sort students by first name or by last name. So usually by default, Google sorts everything by first name. But if I want to sort them by last name and have my list as it looks in other systems, then I can sort it as last name and then download this assignment. So this will give me a CSV file that's just that to I can copy and paste. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll leave this page. Okay. So I think as far as grading, if there are no questions from people specifically on grading, I'll move on. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I don't think there's any questions that I can see about grading. Oh,
okay.
I guess it's possible to grade by rubrics, like with Gubrick or any of the other tools like that.
Okay, that's that's a good question. Yes, I mean there is a way, and actually I would recommend you looking for look in YouTube for a video made by Jenny Magira. It's about 10 minutes, and she shows how to use Classroom with Doctopus and Gubrick. So it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky because first you have to create the assignment here in Classroom, and then students have to open the assignment so that it's created in Google Drive, in the Google Drive folder, and then open Doctopus. And then from there, select the folder and then select the rubric. So it does take some steps. I mean, it's not that easy, but it is possible. So if you have a few minutes later on, check that video from Jenny Magira. If you search for Classroom Doctopus Gubrick, you'll see it there. So it is possible, but it's quite a workaround.
Cool, thanks.
Yep. Okay. So now another question that a lot of people have is with collaborative assignments. We all know that with Google Docs we're used to working collaboratively and kids working but there's no option when I create an assignment. There is no option to separate kids in groups. So there's actually a couple of workarounds. One workaround would be to make a copy for each student, like we did right now. Then one of the students from the group would have to share that document with the other students, and then that person will turn it in. So as we saw in the grading part, you can give the students a grade even if they didn't turn in the assignment themselves. So even if their group leader turned in the assignment, you can give them a grade. And the other workaround is it's similar, but you don't make a copy for each student. You actually don't provide any template. So if you don't provide anything, the student can turn in any kind of Drive folder, Drive document. So again, the group leader would turn in the document or the presentation, and then you can grade the students individually. Well, give them a grade even though they didn't turn in anything. What you can have them do after their team leader turns in the assignment is let me go back to as a student now Jen. Let's see. Now you have as a student you have the possibility to turn in an assignment. So even though there's but that's a bad example because there is an assignment here. But let me this group assignment. You can, as a student, mark as done. So if your team leader turned it in, then you as another member of the team, you can mark it as done. So you don't get the notification that you haven't turned it in, and your team leader already turned it in to your teacher. So you can go ahead and mark it as done, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay. You can send a private message to the teacher or not. You can just mark it as done, and that's it. Okay. Because as a student, you want to see green and not red, because red means you haven't turned in something. Okay, so those are the two workarounds that I can think of collaborative assignments, and they work fine. But hopefully, Google will work on a solution that works within Classroom, and we don't have to do those workarounds. So if you go to Classroom, there's a question mark on the bottom right of your screen. You can get help, ask a question, or send feedback. And the engineers working on Google Classroom are reading really, really closely all of your comments and your feedback. And the functionalities that get more attention, that get most votes, are gonna end up being higher in Google's priority, and they'll work on those solutions earlier on. So if we talked about a couple here, but I know that one of them is having a co-teacher, because right now there's only you can only have one teacher. So that's one of functionalities you might want to provide feedback on. Also, I know that Google is working on opening the Classroom API, which means that other systems will be able to integrate with it soon. So that's something to look forward to. There's no specific date, at least not openly discussed with us non-Googlers, but I know that they're working on it. So that's something to be excited about, because if it can work nicely with the system in place in your school already, especially for things like attendance and grading, then that would be great. So make sure to provide feedback. You know, I know that for a lot of products, you feel that when you provide feedback, your voices are not heard. But here, you know, this tool was designed for educators, so you know, they're listening, and whatever you think is important, like we talked about calendar and integration and working on group assignments and having a co-teacher, they will work on it, and they will become you know, their #1 priorities. So make sure you provide feedback. So with that, I think we can start some of the Q&As that we left for the
Sure.
end.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great questions here. You touched on one a little bit when talking about feedback. The question was about having multiple teachers for a classroom, or a co-teachers or something like that. So like Juan said, that's something that you can definitely request in the feedback section of Classroom.
Yes. And let me just mention something very quickly, because I've seen maybe a couple of videos and blog posts of people sharing the folder, the class folder, with another teacher, and but on the tests that I have done, that doesn't work really well, because the documents are, as a co-teacher, you can't, at least on the tests that I did, the co-teacher couldn't see the documents created by the students. So they could just see the folder, and it was empty. But it might work for others, so you might try that in the meantime.
Cool, thanks. The top question that we got, and then it was asked in a couple of different ways throughout the Q&A app, is there a way to schedule an assignment to be available later, or to delay making an assignment available to students? So for example, a teacher is working on a Sunday, but they don't want the assignment to be available to students until, you know, Monday or Wednesday or something like that.
And no. No, the answer is no, but I'm sure it's one of the top 5 suggestions. So do keep on providing feedback for that, because I've heard a lot of teachers wanting to do that, and a lot of systems out there that can do that, where you can schedule an assignment in advance. But no, not yet. I'd like to say no, not yet.
Yeah, and one mentioned before that Classroom's already evolved based off of feedback that's already come in. So I think that's really encouraging if you're using Classroom and maybe you're not totally convinced that it's the right solution for you. It's already changed based off of feedback, so that's really exciting to hear, I think, that they're willing to listen to everyone.
Yeah, like for example, the posts, and having the ability to restrict students from posting and from commenting. So now you have that ability, and that was, you know, one of the top parts on feedback. I forgot to mention one little bit, which might be important for teachers. And let me share my screen. for a sec. So as a student, if you have lots of classes, you're going to get a lot of emails from Classroom, which is good, because you know what's going on and what you have to do. But for students, it might be a little too much, and it might not be easy for them to have their emails organized. And even students can take a look at the unsubscribe button. You're receiving this email because you're signed up for the English class, and they can unsubscribe. And there's no way as a teacher to limit that. So they can unsubscribe because they're getting too many emails. So instead of that, they can do a couple things. They could, in their Gmail, if they have their inbox configured, let me turn all of the tabs on. The Classroom notifications will go to updates. Okay, so they will not go directly to their primary email, but they will go to updates, and it might be easier for them to manage and not get so many emails and notifications. And the other thing they can do is create a filter. So Classroom, as you can see, it has an email address. So you can set a filter, or you can help your students set up a filter where all of their notifications will go to a label, for example, and that way they'll be better organized and not have so many emails that might confuse them. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Juan. Let's see. Another big question here, which Juan, you may not be able to comment on, but is there any hope of a parent view of Classroom, or ability for parents to check in on a Classroom?
Yeah, and I think the answer is still provide feedback, and it might be one day. Yeah, and when I ask Googlers those questions, because I have had the chance of talking to them, they always mention, and it's very politically correct and very careful. They choose their words very carefully, that it's a work in progress, and when people ask them, will this replace my LMS, they always answer, this is a tool created for educators and it might suit many of their needs, but it's not in their plans to take over an LMS solution. So a lot of those questions I think will be based on feedback and seeing the importance that the teachers give on certain functionalities. So.
Do you know of a way for a Google Apps administrator to view all classrooms in a domain? Do you know if that's possible?
No. I don't think it's possible. Let me look.
If it's not possible at the moment, I would assume that when Google starts opening up the APIs to Classroom, that might be something that third-party companies might work on, because I think there's definitely a lot of value there as a Google Apps admin to be able to see all of your classrooms.
Right. Yeah, and other companies, like you were saying, they do it for things like Drive and Google Sites, so they might be able to do it with Classroom. So hopefully Google will do it, but provide the feedback.
We've got a question here about group assignments. What do you may have touched on this a little bit earlier, but what kind of workflows do you feel work best for assigning a group assignment? Because teachers sometimes want to assign a template, but they don't want to have a ton of files appear in their classroom folders. They only want a handful or something like that. So do you have suggestions for these group assignments?
Yeah, and I mentioned a couple. a couple of suggestions. If you want to use a template, then create a copy for each student, but only have the team leader turn it in. And if it's something that you're not going to work on a template, students are going to do some research and create a presentation, then don't attach anything and have the group leader turn in the assignment, and then have the others mark it as done, so that the teacher knows that the team leader already turned it in, and it doesn't show up for them as not turned in.
Great, thanks. Another question here, a question that we definitely get a lot. Is there a way to use Google Classroom across multiple domains? So that's currently not possible. I know, Juan, did you say that was something that they were working on, or because I know that's a very common request from Google Apps for Education domains.
Yeah, and I heard that they were working on it, but no ETA or any official word on it. No.
Gotcha. Let's see. A lot of these questions are sort of roadmap or is X feature available? So like repeating assignments. Is there a way to set up an assignment on a weekly basis or something like that?
No. No. Yeah. No. Yeah, but I mean, and I think from all of these questions, what teachers should get is, this tool is yours, and if you feel that something is important, make sure you speak out and provide feedback. Now there's a few hundred people watching this, and a lot of people watching the recording later, so we have a lot of people providing feedback, and you can shape this product to be what you want it to be. So yeah, keep on providing feedback. 5, 10 times doesn't matter.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. I'm not sure if you have talked about this before, but what about the process for the end of a semester or the end of a school year? Are teachers going to have to repost all assignments and add new students at the beginning of the next semester? How do you see that process going?
Right now, and I don't know if for the teachers who tried it during the summer and then started the new year what they did, but you're going to have that folder in Google Drive. So to me, you would have to create a new class, create a new classroom, and maybe next year start, in the title, writing year 14-15 or 15-16, so it's easier to manage. Especially, I mean, the most important part will be the folders, I think, because in Google Classroom, you can have some comments and things like that. But the most important part is the document. So when they start building up year after year, it might not be a bad idea to rename those Drive folders, 14-15, and then next year name the class 15-16. Yeah.
Great. All right, so we are just at an hour right now, so I would like to wrap this up. I know there's a ton of other questions that we weren't able to get to. Juan's not going to be able to answer every single question that you have, but we have hundreds of people on this Hangout right now. A lot of them have answers to your questions, so it's a great opportunity for you guys to ask questions and then some of you answer each other's questions. We do have a Google Plus community that we've created just for gCON. So if you go into Google Plus and search for gCON, feel free to post your questions there. And if some of you have answers to questions, please check out the gCON community and try and help us out with answering some of these questions. Juan might be able to stop by and answer some questions there as well if he has time. But it's just, there's not a better resource than, the several hundred educators that we have on this Hangout right now to, leverage each other and help each other out with Classroom. So with that, I would like to just kind of wrap up our first presentation of the gCON for Google Apps for Education today. So I want to thank Juan very much for joining us and putting together an awesome presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. It was my pleasure, and yes, I'll try to get in the community and answer some of the questions. But thank you for the opportunity and for giving this to teachers, and you're doing a great job. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Juan. So I'll post the link to that community on this event page. But if you do search for gCON in Google+, you should be able to find it. So with that, I want to say thank you all for joining us today, and please join us again at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for our next presentation of gCON, and we're going to be going over how you can streamline the writing and grading process, and we'll be joined by Kevin Brookhauser, who's got an awesome presentation for you. So thanks again, and we'll see you in a couple hours.